Hello, it is Dan, and I am here with my second video. I wanted to thank all of the people who watched the first video and sent some comments. That was very cool. So I actually thought it was less cringy than I would expect and decided to make a second video. And starting with that haul was a pretty easy, natural place to start. So I didn't know what to do for a second video, and I imagine if I do continue to make these videos, I'll probably just showcase comics and show off new things I get and talk about comics I like. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of that, and I probably won't do another video like this or very often where I just more talk about my life. But I wanted to talk about some of the specific comics and the specific people that introduced me to comics that had a really big part in shaping my interest in comics and moving my collecting forward into new territories and discovering cool new things, because I kind of thought about it and traced it through about maybe 8 different sequences where maybe I got out of reading comics and something or someone brought me back into it. So starting out, the first comics I ever read, I was thinking, like, what was the first comic I ever read? Well, the first comics I ever got were definitely comic strip reprints that Santa brought me. And it started with Garfield. And, you know, as a little kid in the 80s, I liked the Garfield books. And then I got Calvin and Hobbes, and I started getting Far Side. And quickly discarded the Garfields, and my mom was a school teacher, and she just took them to her classroom. But I did love the Calvin and Hobbes and the Far Side, and I have examples to show of everything, except I could not find the Calvin and Hobbes or the Far Side books. I know I still have them. They're just in my garage somewhere, and I was looking through boxes and I did not find them, but I did find an old photo album that I was pretty surprised to find that is actually going to provide another visual aid later. But I did find a picture of me from that era that kind of proves I was into comics from a young age. There's me with a Superman pajamas and a little Transformer. So cute. So that's what got me started. But as most kids, I'm sure, in the 80s growing up, I was all about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was also very into Transformers and G.I. Joe, and I loved all the cartoons, and I collected all the action figures. So I was way into action figures, and when I found out that there was Ninja Turtles comics, I was all about it. But unfortunately, I was a bit too young to catch the real Eastman and Laird Turtles when they came out. So because I was all into the cartoon, I got in on these Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures comics. So this was the first stuff I ever actually collected. And this is all that's left. There was way, way more of these. I definitely had issue 1. This is number 2. You know, this is just whatever had survived. Not to talk about anything too depressing, but I was born and raised in a town called Paradise, California. And if that sounds familiar to anyone, it's because the town of Paradise was completely decimated by a horrible wildfire in November of 2018 that burned the entire town down. Almost everything was gone. So needless to say, my parents lost their homes. My mom and my stepdad's home, gone. My dad and my stepmom's home, gone. My grandparents' home that my dad owned, gone. His business, gone. But it was a fantastic place to grow up. Very small town. You know, didn't have to lock your doors at night kind of place. Just a mountain town full of trees and not a whole lot to do. So hanging out, reading comics, playing outside, and playing with action figures. That was kind of my life in the 80s. And drawing. I got really, really into drawing. I was always into drawing, but I continued to get more into it once I started reading comics. And in 3rd grade, I started drawing my own comics. I created my own comic book characters and started drawing my own comics. And no, I will not be showing those off on this channel. But I really enjoyed doing it. And I kept it going. And in 5th grade, I made a new friend. He was my best friend from 5th grade all the way until I graduated from high school. And in 5th grade, he's like, dude, you draw comics? I draw too. Let's draw comics together. So we would just hang out at lunch every day and draw comics, and made up our own characters, and we'd have them cross over into each other's books and stuff. And I remember in junior high, we got another friend of ours to collaborate, and all three of us co-wrote and drew this 5-issue miniseries called Unlucky Larry, where an unfortunate man named Larry gets killed like 4 times on every page. And it was probably a pretty funny comic. Anyway, so these comics, these Ninja Turtles comics, take you up until 1992. Well, when I started hanging out with that guy in 5th grade, around that time, he started introducing me to a lot of his other comics, and he was really into X-Men and a lot of Marvel stuff that I didn't have any experience with. It kind of was intimidating to me to think of having to jump in on issue 364 and have no idea what was going on. So, I mean, I liked Batman, and I liked some Spider-Man and things like that, but I just wasn't drawn to it. I felt like I was coming in the middle of something that I had to know where it started. So, although I read his, I'm sure they had to have been like Jim Lee X-Men's and Rob Liefeld X-Forces and Todd McFarlane Spider-Man's, I didn't actually collect any of that because I was just too scared to jump in to something that seemed so unfamiliar. But when Image Comics started, I got in on the ground floor. Well, I mean, he got in first and showed me his Image Comics, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. So, of course, it was all about Spawn. That was the number one that, hooked me the most. But I was checking out most of them. So I started trying to track down these Spawns, and I guess, okay, so the first one I think I bought brand new when it came out would be number 11. I think this is the one that Frank Miller wrote. And I was like, I got to get back issues. And Paradise was a very small town. You would not expect it to have a comic book store. But because of the, speculator boom in the 90s, there was actually 2 small comic book stores in Paradise. And one of them was so small, it was in the, I guess, downtown area, which was almost nothing. It was literally like between 2 buildings, what would have been an alley. They just put a wall in the front and the back, and that little corridor had comics in it, and it was awesome. I mean, it honestly seemed like you could touch both walls if you put your arms out. It was so small. And then a different place, that place closed, and then a different place opened up, and I started going there, and that's when I started picking up comics monthly for the first time. But I needed to track down the back issues. I think the shop probably had a few of these, a few of these ones I know I got really early, like number 8, I remember getting really early. But this leads to my very first ever comic book hunt. My grandparents on my mom's side lived in Santa Barbara. And so we would go to Santa Barbara on family vacations every year. And when I'd go to Santa Barbara, they had comic book stores down there, or at least one really good comic book store. And so, of course, when I was down there when I was younger, I was always looking for the Ninja Turtles comics. But now that I was getting into the Image Comics, it was all about trying to track down the elusive Spawn 5. And so here you can even see on the Spawn 1 sticker there, Metro Comics, Santa Barbara, paid $8 for number 1 in 1993 or 4, probably 93. I spent $8.50 on number 2 there. And wow, a whopping $10 on the number 3, Violator. And this was my favorite issue. Right here, I spent $11 on Spawn 4. Now, I should mention I have not reread these since then. Like, I haven't read these comics in 30 years. I keep them for nostalgia, but, I still understand why I liked it, and I can still appreciate it. But see, Spawn 5 was a motherfucker. I could not find Spawn 5 anywhere. So the summer after 7th grade, it would have been like 93 or 4, my mom took my brother and I on a really long road trip in the summer from Southern California all the way up to Oregon. And I made my mom stop at every town we came through and look for a comic book store. And if there was one, I had to go into that comic book store and look for Spawn 5. And so I looked and looked, and we went to so many different towns, and no one had it until we finally got way up in Oregon, somewhere I think on the coast, and they had the Spawn 5, and it was like such a satisfying feeling to have hunted so much for this comic and finally got it for $8. And this is my other visual aid I found in that photo album. The photo my mom took of me outside the store after I got it. There's me with the Spawn 5 and the No Fear shirt, which definitely roots it in a point in time. So that was very exciting, and I really liked Spawn. But the other Image comics I was really into were a little off, a little out of the mainstream ones. Like, you know, I got the Wildcats and the Youngblood and the spin-offs from that, but I was way more into stuff like this when it came out. Like Pit was really fun. I really liked Dale Keown's art, and stories are not breaking any new ground, but I like this more. And this is when I was like starting to try to develop my own taste for artists. Everybody liked Todd McFarlane. I needed to find somebody else that nobody else was that into. And the two guys I found that really did it for me were Jay Lee, who did this Youngblood Strike File. Now, come on. Jesus Christ, look at that cover. That is what you want in the 90s right there. So this guy did a Wildcats thing too, and I was way into him. And, you know, he had the Hell Shock, which was fairly poopy, but I still got it. The other guy I was way into was Sam Keith, and so I got the Max, and I collected these as much as I, you know, for as much as I did collect in the 90s. And I really, really dug Sam Keith. I still do. Sam Keith is still to this day one of my favorite artists. So I bought these mostly new when they came out. And then we all know what happened. Comics went down the shitter. But also in the 90s, I started playing the drums, and I got way into that. And I started playing in bands in high school. And I started my first real band in high school in 1997. And I didn't even think about comics for years. And I graduated, I moved out, I started playing music all the time. And I met my wife when I was 18. And she was 20. And we moved in together right away. And after the first place we lived, we moved into an apartment. It's the only apartment I've actually ever lived in for only like 8 months. And when I was in this apartment, this was in 2002, I hadn't even thought of comics or read comics in, 4 or 5 years. No, probably more like 6, 7 years. And there was a comic book store right down the street. And I'm like, whoa, sweet, comics. I loved comics. Maybe there's still cool comics out there. I should go in and see what they have. And that's when I discovered my local shop. That is still my local shop to this day. It's called Collectors Inc. And I really appreciate everything they've done for me. They've helped me track down a lot of really cool stuff. And when I went in there, I didn't know what to look for, but I wanted to get something cool and new. And I wanted to see if they had more issues of the things I used to get, because I didn't know, like I missed the boat on a lot of stuff that came out in the late 90s and early 2000s that was actually good. I didn't know about, Hate or 8-Ball or anything like that at that time. So when I went in there, they steered me towards this book, which I know, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Not very fine reading here, but this actually was the second version I got. I got the single issues from there, and once I found this director's cut, I'm like, oh, that's gonna have more stuff in it. Maybe I'll just give the other issues away to my friend. Since I did that, I kind of regretted that too, because there was one strip in one of them that wasn't reprinted in here, where is one of the funniest strips actually. Now that I think about it, that it's like a 2 or 3 page strip This mom is leaving for work, and her little toddler's in the driveway crying because she doesn't want the mom to leave for work, and she pulls out, and the kid just starts chasing after the car, screaming, tears flying back, jumps across, grabs the back of the car, and climbs up like the Terminator. And he was just so psychotic looking. That was a funny strip. But I did reread this once a few years back, and it does not hold up. But this opened up my eyes to something new, that comics could have some really dark stuff in them, that they weren't just flashy superheroes. There was a lot of blood and killing, a lot of very, very senseless violence in this, psychotic violence, which did it for me. And it was super duper depressing. It's like the most depressing thing to actually read it. But I read it, and it kind of somehow clicked and made me go, yeah, comics are sweet. And so I had the people at the store help me track down more back issues of things, and I loved the Max. And I'm like, is the Max still going? They're like, I think it just finished, and I don't remember what year it finished, but I think it was around that time, like early 2000s. So they helped me track down all the issues of the Max that I needed, or most of them. Collector's Ink right there, and these all have like a 250 sticker on them. They have this thing at Collector's Ink called bonus bucks. That glare is awful. For every $10 you spend, you get a bonus buck, and that bonus buck is good towards back issues. You can use your bonus bucks for up to 50% off of back issues. So if I bought $10 worth of back issues, I could use 5 of my bonus bucks, and it would only cost me $5. So all of these comics that are $2.50 were actually $1.25 when you factor in the bonus bucks. I know these go for a lot of money now, so I have the full run of the Max, and they're all in really good shape. And I haven't gone back and read it, actually. I will go back and read that. So I dipped my toes back into comics. And then, by this point, I'm in my early 20s, and I was just partying, playing music, hanging out with my girlfriend, not thinking about comics. And by the way, the dream of being a cartoonist when I was young and wanted to draw my own comics, that's truly what I wanted to do for a career. That was what I wanted to do with my life, was to be a cartoonist. I even have in this photo album, it was actually part of a school assignment, and there's pages in here from 1995 of me talking about, the years I knew I wanted to be a comic book artist. But once I started playing drums, I just kind of gave up on drawing. I still can draw okay, but I have not kept up with my chops. So, we're now a few years forward. I'm just touring with my band a lot and not thinking about comics. And at some point, a couple years before I got married, we had a roommate for less than a year, a friend of mine, and his birthday was on Christmas Eve, and a friend of ours named Kirk came over, and he gave my friend Caesar, where is it? There it is. This comic, this graphic novel right here, the first trade of Preacher. Oh boy, my life pretty much changed at that moment, because Caesar didn't really seem that interested in comics. He never read comics before. It was just a gift. My friend Kirk liked this comic, so he gave it to Caesar thinking Caesar would like it. He never really read it, so I picked it up and read it, and it fucking blew my mind. This is my favorite comic series ever. I guess if I had to pick one, this is the best series. It did everything I wanted it to do and more. What can you say about Preacher that hasn't been said? It is so creative, such good storytelling, really nice art, but the story was just so good and so twisted, and that's totally my sense of interest. I will, I'm sure, speak more about Garth Ennis and what his comics really mean to me in better detail later, once I construct an episode about Garth Ennis. But honestly, I think what could kind of sum it up is he does for comics what Bill Hicks does for stand-up comedy to me. Bill Hicks is my favorite comedian, and they speak the truth. They speak what's on their mind. They aren't care of offending people. They can be super raunchy, but even if they say something really screwed up, you start to think about it and you're like, yeah, I believe that. I would do that too. I can side with you on that. And, you know, this just has such insane stuff in it. This is the Saint of Killers, and I love this character so much. My old band actually wrote a song, and we always named our songs Random Stuff because we were instrumental, and we had a song called The Saint of Killers. So that really opened up my eyes. I went back to Collectors Inc. I'm like, there's this thing called Preacher, I need it. And they helped me get all of the trades. And then I started shopping there a lot more often. All right, I went back to shopping there again. But the another person that came into my life around this time, or was in my life, that introduced me to new comics, was a friend of mine named Ernesto. And I was at just a get together at his house with a bunch of people one night, and I was mentioning to him that I started reading this series called Preacher, and I was really into it. And is there anything else out there like that? Because I knew he was into comics. He's like, oh yeah, just any of this Vertigo stuff. You got to get on more of that Vertigo stuff. And I said, like what? And he wrote down names for me. I remember writing them down and putting them in my wallet and carrying that around for a long time. He's like, you got to get Brian Azzarello, 100 Bullets. And you got to get Brian K. Vaughan, Why the Last Man. And you got to get Warren Ellis, Transmet. And you got to get Jason Aaron, Scalped. And I did, and I liked it all. And Scalped was also another one that was just really, really great. I mean, I love Westerns. This isn't technically a Western, but, Indians on the res, really messed up, lots of screwed up shit. Love it. And that really made me feel like story first. I am all about the art, the writers. I didn't really care as much about the art. I mean, the art in that is really great. But I was far more interested with the story versus when I was younger and was way into the art. But I got sucked back in to searching for finding my own stuff. Well, okay, the next section after that would be, I guess, the period in time that I would call more of my like personal discovery and personal growth, where I started finding things on my own without any assistance. I was now fully back into comics, and I was in downtown one time, and I went into what I will refer to politely as the evil store, and I don't go in there really ever, but I did go in there. This was probably in 2009, I'm thinking. And this book caught my eyes from up high, and I was like, wait a sec, is that Jay Lee? The guy's like, yeah. And he sold me this hardcover of The Dark Tower by Stephen King, which I'd never heard of the Dark Tower novels. I'd read some Stephen King when I was younger, but I had not read any Dark Tower. So after I read that first hardcover of The Dark Tower, mind blown again. Just absolutely incredible art, an incredible story. Jay Lee did something so interesting with his art. I mean, yeah, I really love his old stuff. The Namor art is really great. Something happened though, and he got more refined. And I love the dirty, scratchy, inky stuff he used to do, but now he had this symmetrical, shiny, really surreal kind of look. And then Richard Eisenoff is the colorist on this stuff, and he did a bang-up job making these things look so great. So I rebought the single issues after I got that hardcover, and I just fell in love with this story. And so before I actually got way back into comics, I had a brief stint where I just obsessed over these books. So I got engaged at the end of 2009, and I got married in June of 2011. And so during that time, that whole year and a half of being engaged, I read all 7 of the Dark Tower books, and it was the thing I swear got me through that whole difficult time. And it's expensive, and it's hard, and it's stressful. And these books just really, really, really meant a lot to me. And I recommend them highly, highly recommend these stories. The cool thing about the comics is they take the story that Stephen King wrote and they put it in chronological order, which, if anyone doesn't know about the Dark Tower, it was 7 books. It started in like not a fanzine, but like it's like the magazine of science fiction and fantasy. So maybe it was kind of like a fanzine for novelists in the late 70s. And then it kind of, the first book was just a couple little random things that they compiled into this book called The Gunslinger. And then it got some traction. Stephen King got a lot more popular, and then he started coming out with more books. The first book had a little part about the main character Roland's childhood, but it didn't start chronologically. And then there's other little parts in some of the books where it does flashbacks to his childhood, but it's book 4, Wizard and Glass, where they really explore this era of his life when he's got these friends, Elaine and Cuthbert. And this one's open. Let's see if I can just find a cool page. So, yeah, man. Booyah. It's really, really good. It's just extremely cool art. You know, sometimes the backgrounds are a bit simple, but the coloring is really, really great. And the story is fantastic. And the, you know, I don't know about Peter David. I honestly don't think he had as much of a hand as this woman, Robin Firth. Robin Firth did, like, she wrote guidebooks to the Dark Tower series for Stephen King. Stephen King hired her to make, like, reference books for him to keep track of all of the details. Dude, look at that cover right there. That is the Crimson King. Another thing that kind of got me is, like, I'm a really big King Crimson fan. It's one of my favorite bands of all time. And the Crimson King, I mean, you can't totally picture him in the books. You know, they don't describe him that well in these comics. Like, getting to see him, seeing Jay Lee interpret him was just fantastic. So I read all those books, and of course, as I'm reading those books, I'm tracking down the comics as they're coming out and keeping up with them. And that's when I kind of got more into, you know, new comics again. But I still was way more interested in trying to discover things I had missed out on. So, of course, being obsessed with Preacher, I'm buying everything Garth Ennis that I can find. And I hear he does the Punisher, and I'm like, well, that's another one of those Marvel characters where there's like hundreds of issues that I'm behind on. I feel weird about starting it, but if Garth Ennis did it, I'm on board. So there's the first Punisher that Garth Ennis ever did. Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe. Quite a fun story to read. And I did go in chronological order. You know, I read everything he did in chronological order. So there's the Welcome Back Frank series. It's like 12 issues, I believe. That's really funny, super duper funny. And Garth Ennis, of course, has a disdain for superheroes, and he likes the Punisher, but he had to kind of root him in the Marvel Universe at that time. So he had a lot of fun with it. He got away with a lot of cool stuff. And then there was the Marvel Knights Punisher that he did, which was also really great. Highly recommend the issue where he fights Wolverine. You can imagine. Wolverine loses all of his skin. Then he did this Punisher Max. So this one I got signed by Tim Bradstreet, the cover artist there at a Chico. Oh, there's the advertisement right on the back there. Or this is actually in Oroville. There's Brian Posehn. I got to meet Brian Posehn. That was cool. So these Punisher Max comics, up there with Preacher as just the best time I've ever had reading comics. These are so good. I have no real thoughts to try to sell them to you other than just read them. They're so good. It's taken out of the Marvel Universe. It's dealing with real life stuff. It's basically like, what if there's a guy who really wants to take care of the evil fuckers in the world, and that's what he does for a lot of issues. You know, 3 long boxes of Punisher right there. and I just got out a few just to show some that I had. Here's a cool one-shot Garth Ennis did called The Cell, signed by Bradstreet as well there. And this is one of those must-haves. This is the end where Garth Ennis and Richard Corbin, my two favorites, team up for one amazing comic about the Punisher at the end of the world. Highly recommended. Here's a little tip for anyone who's out there that might like the Punisher and want to track down something rare. This little mini comic is written by Garth Ennis, drawn by Steve Dillon, so the original Preacher team, and covered by Tim Bradstreet. I had him sign it. This mini comic was packaged with a Punisher DVD. These things are really hard to find, but I bet copies of the Punisher DVD are not hard to find. So you just have to not look for the comic. You have to look for the DVD and hope that it includes this sweet mini comic. So, because I got so into the Garth Ennis Punisher, I'm like, what else is, what's up with the old Punisher? So then I start to get all the old Punisher. I got all the Spider-Man appearances in, you know, Marvel Tales issues, and my local shop helped me track down the original stuff. So, you know, they got me this first mini-series really cheap, super good quality grade on them, high grade. But yeah, loved it from the start. I'm like, I'm getting everything I can get that's Punisher. There's no doubt about it. So he became like my main guy. And then I had a discovery that gave me another favorite. Mentioned him in the last video, Mr. Jonah Hex. So this was just one of those random, what is this? And let's give it a shot. And of course, the Timothy Truman art really, really got me. And Joe Lansdale is a really great writer. So the combination of these guys on this Jonah Hex stuff was really great. I think this is the second series that they did. There's 3 of them. And I hadn't ever heard of Jonah Hex before, and I was just like, who is this? This is so cool. And I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, he's been around since the 70s. So then I decided to go track some of that down. And this really started getting me thinking about, what have I missed out on from the time periods before I was born? Why don't I know Jack Kirby? I know who he is. Why don't I have any of his stuff? So I started tracking down older comics, and I started getting really into more of Bronze Age and some Silver Age type stuff. This is a facsimile of #1, but I do have all of the issues of All-Star Western, and then that's a sweet, sweet cover right there. Tony DeZuniga, I don't know how to say it, is one of the main artists on Jonah Hex, and he did a really, really great job. These captivated me in a different kind of way. They smell really good, and they're really cool. This cover right here, dude, look at that. You do not want to die that way. So if anyone doesn't know about Jonah Hex, he's a scarred-faced bounty hunter in the Wild West, and he just goes searching for bad dudes, and he's got a good conscience. He's a good guy, and you know, people are always out to get him. Al Hoots, you know, they call him Al Hoots. Kind of like, you know, bandits, varmints. And I don't know, something clicked with me, and I was really, really into this. Am really into this. Look at that sweet poisoned water. Guys, drinking poisoned water. Those vultures are ready to chomp down on him. And so I have collected the entire run of Jonah Hex, these old Jonah Hexes. It started in All-Star Western, went to Weird Western Tales, and it got his own title. And Michael Fleischer took over on writing at some point early on. And, you know, Michael Fleischer, he's kind of got a little something sick going on, and it's really great. I like it. I like it a lot. But speaking of these older comics, I was like, Bernie Wrightson, I hear this name all the time. I got to check out these old Swamp Things. So I fell in love with Bernie Wrightson. How could you not? There's no way to not like Bernie Wrightson. I'm sorry. If you're into comics, there's no way you don't like Mr. Bernie Wrightson. And all my Swamp Things are in just dog shit condition. But I don't care. I have all of the original ones aside from #1, of course. And they are amazing. And this really introduced me to a really fantastic character, which of course led me down the path to find the Alan Moore Swamp Things, and I have all of those. And it's super fun. Wrightson's art's incredible. These comics are obviously very well known, so I don't need to say anything about Swamp Thing. And with Kirby, you know, the first one I actually got was Demon. So the Demon I found because of Garth Ennis writing the Demon. And if anyone hasn't checked out his Demon, he had John McCrea on art, and that John McCrea art is top notch. But I loved this series, and then of course I went and got Commandy and all the other, you know, stuff I could find from this time period. I still haven't read all the Fourth World stuff, and would love to. I did like New Gods, but I need to get those other ones. So, I mean, this is just a few of the demons. I just grabbed out a stack of them. And I started seeing, I was buying lots and lots of back issues at this time, as cheap as I could find them, as many as I could possibly get, voraciously collecting back issues. And you keep seeing Joe Kubert on covers all the time. And maybe it was because I saw him on covers. Maybe it's because Garth Ennis did write an Enemy Ace thing, but I started checking out Enemy Ace. And this is absolutely one of my other favorite comic characters outside of the Punisher and Jonah Hex. So I started searching for these, and you know, I don't have the originals for the very first couple appearances, just reprints of it, but I got all the Star Spangled War stories featuring Enemy Ace. And if anyone doesn't know Enemy Ace, this is a German in World War I fighter pilot, kind of like the Red Baron in a sense, who has a conscience. He's kind of a loner, and he considers himself to be a killer, even though everyone in combat is forced to kill. That's why they're there. But he finds himself to be something darker than he should. But they're really, really beautiful. The art is really what you want for these. This is why you want them, the art and the original issues, so that you can sniff them. So I have all the Enemy Aces, and at this point I can't remember what I saw first from Corbin, but I found my favorite artist, Richard Corbin. And this would be one of the most amazing and probably maybe underappreciated or unknown Corbin books. It's called The House on the Borderland. This is a trade from Vertigo. And it's pretty hard to find. I found it, cover price at my shop. But people talk about Corbin on these videos a lot, and they never talk about this book. So if you want me to look into it, I will make a video. Just comment about it, I guess. Tim Truman, still going strong, tracking down more stuff like Grimjack. This is where I started going to what meager little cons were in my town. There's almost been none, but finding things on my own that I'd never heard of in back issue bins, that was very exciting to me. I remember one time at this unbearably hot convention in the summer where there was no air conditioning, and I was literally dripping sweat off my face onto the back issues as I'm flipping through them. I found Troy Nixie, Bill the Clown, both of these issues side by side in what I like to refer to as a nice vein of clown comics, psycho clown comics, I should say, in a dollar box. So I mean, just to get these and like 4 or 5 other psycho clown comics all in one grab was really cool. And it just, it's like, wow, this black and white stuff is really cool. And I started getting more into that. And then the next big change in my collecting habits came with the discovery of Cartoonist Kayfabe, which I'll tell you briefly how I discovered. It was only probably about 4 months after they started the channel, and I had to stay home from work one day because I was sick. And this may surprise you comic YouTuber people, but I have never thought to look on YouTube for comic books before. Whenever I looked on YouTube, it was just to look up bands, live concerts of bands and stuff. But I had, been thinking about how much I want more back issues, and I'm like, maybe does anybody have like garage sales with back issues, or I don't know, how do you even find that? And I was just like, what if I look on YouTube? What if there's a video of a guy finding incredible stuff? Like, I knew there was shows on, people finding things in storage units and stuff. And so I just typed in YouTube comic books garage sale score or something. And what came up was this video of Jim's 25-cent comic feast or something. And it was some just show and tell thing where Jim Rugg had just a top-down view of a long box, and he just went and just started throwing up all these books and flipping through them that were all, black and white boom 80s type books and stuff that he got for $0.25. And I was just writing stuff down and reading it and soaking it in. And what else does this guy have? Clicked on it, and I'm like, oh, there's a channel and they're showing off cool stuff that I'd never heard of. So I luckily got in so early that they were showing things I'd never heard of. And this will shock a lot of you people that I didn't know any of these artists, because I had been collecting comics avidly. But I'm in a small town. I don't have a huge giant shop where they have all these perennial sellers from all these weirder companies. It's, just mostly big Marvel and DC shelves, Image and stuff like that. And they had lots of back issues, but most of them were going to be, Bronze Age and stuff. So, I didn't know about any of this stuff that I'm about to show you, and all of it started blowing my mind from the videos. I started tracking it down mostly online, and it was the kayfabe effect, but it was before they ever started mentioning the kayfabe effect as a thing, before they actually started calling it out, like, you got to mitigate the kayfabe effect by joining the Patreon. I was just buying the stuff that they were talking about. And then luckily, by the time their kayfabe effect actually became a thing that was making it harder to get books, I'd kind of gotten all of the main stuff I wanted, starting out with the Black Hole here. Charles Burns just really appealed to me. I'm not going to take them out. You know what Black Hole is. Those, there was one issue in here that was hard to find, but I got those all pretty quick. I also got this Curse of the Mole Men, which is really cool. And the next one from Big Baby. These are Big Baby. This is Blood Club. These are from Kitchen Sink. This one I ordered online from something called New Cadia, and they didn't say anything about it being autographed, but it was autographed, sketched inside, and remarked by Charles Burns. That was pretty sweet. Didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't try to track down all the singles, but I got a bunch of the Love and Rockets trades from the old Fantagraphics ones, and got them at the local used bookstore in downtown here, and was stoked on that. But I did find the first two issues of the singles. That's a second print. And another one that that they showed, I think it was the first kayfabe video ever, Faust, Tim Vigil. Had never heard of Tim Vigil. I'm all about this kind of stuff. Dark, violent, just over the top, crazy art. And I asked my local shop, Faust, what's that? And they're like, oh, Tim Vigil. Yeah, we know Tim. Yeah, he's been at tons of cons over the years. We got all kinds of that stuff. We'll have to find it in the warehouse. It took them a little while, but they finally tracked it down and started getting me this Faust stuff. And a lot of it was signed. This is signed right there on the bottom. The North Star versions and the Rebel Studios versions, I somehow tracked down all of them. This is an unbelievable cover. I just want to show these early on in my YouTubing experience, just to make sure that children and people know what this channel is all about. Cutting that guy's face right off. So I have a very interesting story to tell another time about how I got a lot of my Faust comics, and there will be a tribute episode to a person that that he didn't have a big part in my collecting, but he did have an impact on me, and it's a really important story to me, so I do want to tell it at some point. These are some of the coolest comics that Tim Vigil ever did. Gothic Knights. This is some ridiculously good art. I mean, I would say the level of detail is up there with Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein. Pretty nice. This isn't on glossy paper, so you can actually see that. Let's see if I can find a good one. It's just, it's so detailed it almost would look like nothing on the screen, but I mean, I guess I could try to get it in close. Look at that axe to the face right there. Bam. So it's just a 2-issue series, but I started getting into Tim Vigil and Joe Vigil, his brother. And Joe Vigil has a little bit of a quirkier style, but it's really great. He did the Gunfighters in Hell series. I have all the single issues, but then I somehow found this like leather shiny covered trade of it. But this has got some super sick art as well. And the one of the classics, Dog, a definite kayfabe find. You know, they showed Dog off real early in those Outlaw videos. And Dog 3 was the hard one to find. And Dog 3, the search for Dog 3 takes me to the story about that person I wanted to mention on a future video. So we'll put a pin in that. But then, you know, what else did they show me? Well, Dave Cooper. Now obsessed with Dave Cooper. Pippin Norton. Found that at my local shop. What an amazing comic. Pippin Norton is so good. You want to find this. If you don't have it, you want it. And it's probably not the easiest to find, but you're going to get it anyway. Taboo. This was one, you know, I knew about Steve Bissette and stuff, but I had never seen this before. So thank you, Jim and Ed. Man, you guys taught me so much. You taught me about Rick Veitch. I didn't know about Rick Veitch. So, you know, I got all the taboos. I got all the rare bits. Tell me about Rain Nace or Rodney Nace or Damlog. Such an amazing comic. There's 2 issues of this, but one of them is like, I think, a reprint of the other. And this was a really hard one to find. Rawrl. Super good. And taught me about Brendan McCarthy. They taught me about Bill Sienkiewicz. And they taught me about Benjamin Mora. This is a super good book. They taught me about the Canadians that I had somehow never heard of. Like Chester Brown and Seth and Joe Matt. And, of course, they showed off their own books, too. So I got the stuff that they made. And, you know, 8-Ball would be one of the bigger ones that people are like, you never heard of 8-Ball? Well, somehow I didn't. And 8-Ball's great. So I imagine most people have read this that are watching this, so I won't show them all. But I was trying to complete the run, and there was an eBay auction that was a lot of the 8-Balls I needed, and a ton of other Dan Clowes books as well. So, you know, these last ones I think were in there. David Boring and stuff like that. Ice Haven. And the hard to find Death Ray last issue. And there was this in there too, which is some little book about Dan Clowes called The Imp. That was one of my more pleasing eBay scores. So all of that takes me to current. The thing that's been influencing me a lot, mostly the last couple years, has been these other YouTube channels that I've watched. I don't subscribe to a lot of them. I don't have a whole lot of extra time to watch stuff, but I do like to watch a little bit of YouTube in the morning and, you know, my lunch break and stuff like that. And so the first one that I found that was like a proper YouTuber that wasn't like, you know, famous cartoonist guys was Sleepy Reader. And how I discovered Sleepy Reader was one time I was looking on YouTube and I was like, yeah, I wonder if Richard Corbin has ever done any interviews. I don't know if I've ever seen one. So I searched for Richard Corbin interview. Of course, nothing comes up because I don't think Richard Corbin ever did any interviews, certainly not video interviews. But what did come up first was a video by Mr. Damien about Richard Corbin where he shows off a whole bunch of Richard Corbin stuff. And I really liked it. And I got to say, the 666 in his name got me right here too. I'm like, this guy's badass. And so I subscribed to him and started watching a lot of his videos. I was trying to find something that I bought based on his recommendation, and I know there's tons, but I couldn't really think of many or find any, but I did find this Kaiju Max. I have not read this yet. I just actually got this recently. These are all like $1 a piece, but I got the first 5 to try it out, so I will let you know what I think of it, Damien, when I get around to it. And then Terrence from Comic Crack, I found out about through just from Damien mentioning him so many times. And the one thing that he turned me on to that is so good was Razor Guts. And he didn't specifically show a video of this, but I think it was like a random act of kindness from La Raza, and she sent him some books, and in there was, I believe, the 4th issue of Razor Guts, and he was like, oh, I need that 4th issue, and sweet. And I just looking at that, I'm like, yeah, I kind of want to see what that is. And so I found this set online of all 4, and I read this and just devoured it. It is so great. Oh, what's great about it, Dan? Wow, tell me what's great. I mean, well, there's this right there. That's pretty sweet, but it's just screwed up. I like screwed up comics. It's, you got the Nazi dudes. It's like a post-apocalyptic world where everyone that's left in the world lives in this one gigantic tower that is so tall it's like through the clouds, and all the people are forced to be like slave labor in there, and the higher up in the building you are, the better status you have. And the main character falls in love with this one girl in the worker drone room that she's in, and he wants to visit her, and then havoc ensues and all kinds of crazy shit happens and lots of people die, and they're basically decide they're going to overthrow the people at the top and they're going to kill them all. And it's by Francisco Solano Lopez, who I mentioned in the last video, Monster Comics from Fantagraphics imprint. And aside from that, most of what I do lately is by Current Comics. My shop, I've kind of exhausted their back issues. I've bought everything I could want from there, and they don't replenish them much, but I'm buying new comics all the time. This was a favorite of mine from a few years back when it came out. And one of my current favorites is Ian Bertram and Precious Metal, but we all know that's great. Little Bird is so good. So thank you for watching, and appreciate any comments you might leave, but I'm not really doing it for that. I just decided to do this. No real reason for it. But I thank you again, and hopefully I'll see you in another video.